Henry Mathis didn't believe in second chances, until a barefoot little girl holding a baby outside a hospital made him stop walking, and for the first time in years, start feeling. Henry Mathis believed in results, not emotions. He built his empire through discipline, efficiency, and an unwavering belief that logic always trumped empathy. His schedule was meticulously planned, his conversations calculated, and his compassion, non-existent, as far as he was concerned. He walked through the city like a man on a mission, never slowing down, never looking around. So when he approached the hospital that Thursday afternoon, it was with the same intention he always carried, to finalize a medical partnership that would expand his company's pharmaceutical reach and increase quarterly profits. He wasn't there to notice anyone. And yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, he did. Near the stone steps leading to the hospital entrance, Henry saw a small shape out of the corner of his eye. A little girl, barely 6, if that, was sitting motionless, holding what looked like a bundle of blankets. At first, he thought she was waiting for someone. But as he drew closer, he noticed her eyes, wide, clear, and exhausted. Her arms were tightly wrapped around an infant swaddled in a pink blanket, the baby's tiny face just barely visible through the folds. The girl's blonde hair was tangled, and her thin frame looked too small for the task of carrying anyone, let alone protecting another human being. Henry stopped walking. It wasn't in his nature to stop. But something about the stillness of the child, her silence in the chaos of the hospital entrance, made him pause. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was just, holding on. He crouched slowly, keeping his voice calm. "Are you all right? Are you lost?" he asked. His voice, usually firm and commanding, softened without him realizing it. The girl didn't flinch, but she looked up at him with a tired expression far too old for her face. "No. We're not lost," she said quietly. "My sister needs milk. Mommy's in a coma." Henry blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness of her answer. He looked at the baby more closely now. The child was no older than a few months, cheeks pale, eyes closed, one tiny hand peeking from the blanket. The girl held her like she'd done it before, like this wasn't the first time she'd had to be the adult. "Where's your father?" he asked gently. "We don't have one," the girl said. "He left when I was little. Then Mommy had Rose. That's her name." Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. "When Mommy got hurt in the crash, they took us to the children's place. But they didn't take care of Rose. They just left her in a room. So I waited until they weren't watching, and I took her. I had to." Henry felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, something sharp and tight that refused to go away. He stood and looked around. People passed by without noticing the scene unfolding at their feet. A security guard at the door eyed him but said nothing. The girl, meanwhile, adjusted the blanket around her sister and tried to keep her steady. Henry knew what he should do: alert child services, step back, let the system handle it. But his feet didn't move. Instead, he reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, and called his assistant. "Cancel the meeting," he said quietly. "I've got something more important." When he looked down again, the girl was watching him, unsure whether to trust him or run. He offered his hand. "Let's go inside. Just to get your sister warm. And fed. You can hold her the whole time if you want." She stared for a moment, then nodded slowly. Her fingers clutched the infant tightly as she stood. Henry led them through the doors and into the hospital, not knowing where this was going, only that for once, he wasn't walking away. Inside the hospital, Henry guided the little girl toward the reception desk, but instead of announcing her presence to the staff, he gently steered her into a quieter waiting area tucked off to the side. The space was warmer, quieter, with soft lighting and a few cushioned chairs that looked rarely used. He didn't want to overwhelm her or the baby, not yet. She sat down carefully, cradling her sister as if the world might still try to pull her away. Henry crouched again, making eye contact and speaking with a tone he barely recognized as his own. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, as though weighing whether to speak. Then she said, "Lily. And this is Rose." Henry nodded, storing the names like they mattered more than anything else on his calendar. He pulled out his phone again and made another call, not to his board or to a driver, but directly to a pediatrician he had worked with during a corporate-sponsored program. He didn't explain everything, only said he needed someone he trusted, urgently. Within minutes, a nurse appeared at the edge of the waiting area and took in the sight of Lily and the baby without asking questions. Henry stood and met her gaze. "Her name is Rose. She hasn't eaten. She's cold. She's been in a bad place." The nurse nodded and gently approached Lily. Lily looked up, clearly torn between fear and instinct. The nurse crouched beside her and smiled. "You can stay with her the whole time, sweetheart. No one's taking her away." Lily finally allowed the nurse to examine the baby while still keeping Rose in her arms. Henry stepped back and watched as Rose was checked for vital signs, her temperature taken, her breathing monitored. The baby didn't fuss much. She was tired, underfed, and far too quiet for her age. While the examination continued, Henry spoke with the doctor in the hallway. He described what little he knew and asked what needed to be done immediately. The pediatrician, a calm woman named Dr. Keener, explained that Rose needed formula, warmth, and observation for a few days. "She's fragile," the doctor said softly. "But this little girl, Lily, she's done something extraordinary. She's kept that baby alive under conditions that would break most adults." Henry said nothing, but inside, something shifted. He walked back to the waiting area with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. Lily sat alone again, bottle now in hand, feeding Rose with quiet concentration. Her fingers were still trembling, but she kept her focus on her sister, brushing her hair aside when it got in the way. Henry didn't interrupt. He waited until the bottle was empty, until Rose had dozed off in her arms, before speaking again. "Do you want to come with me? Just for tonight. Somewhere safe, warm, where you won't have to hide." Lily didn't answer right away. She looked at the baby, then up at him. "Only if I can hold her the whole time." Henry nodded. "That's a promise." An hour later, after filing a temporary notice with the hospital and agreeing to bring Rose back for observation, Henry helped Lily into the back seat of his car. She refused to sit in a booster seat, too afraid to let go of her sister, so he buckled her in as she was, wrapped tightly around the baby, still alert, still unsure. As the city moved past the windows in neon streaks, Henry sat silently in the front seat, his mind trying to make sense of what was happening. Nothing in his life had prepared him for this. And yet, as he glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror, her head tilted protectively over Rose's, he knew with absolute clarity that whatever came next, he couldn't let her go. Not now. Not ever. When they arrived at Henry's apartment, Lily hesitated before stepping out of the car. She held Rose tightly, her arms locked around the baby as if releasing her would mean losing everything. Henry opened the door for her but didn't rush her. He waited quietly as she looked up at the tall building, the glass exterior glowing under the city lights. It didn't look like a place a child belonged, and she clearly sensed it. Still, after a few moments, she climbed out, barefoot and cautious, her clothes wrinkled and her face unreadable. Henry led her through the lobby without drawing attention. The concierge started to ask something, but Henry gave a quiet shake of the head. No questions. Upstairs, his penthouse looked even more sterile than usual. The sleek furniture, minimal decoration, and cold lighting stood in stark contrast to the warmth of the child clinging to the infant in her arms. Henry noticed it immediately and realized how absurd it was, this fortress of wealth and power, completely unprepared for something so human. He led Lily to the guest room, the only one with a bed that wasn't draped in documents or devices. She walked in and stopped at the doorway, surveying the space. Henry gently offered, "You can sleep here. I'll be right down the hall." She looked at the bed, the blanket, the window, and then back at him. "Is there a lock?" she asked softly. He blinked. "On the inside?" She nodded. "Yes. There is." She walked inside without another word. Henry stepped out and let her settle. He didn't want to overwhelm her, not after everything she had just done. In the kitchen, he made warm milk, unsure if it was more for her or the baby. He returned a few minutes later and found Lily sitting on the bed, still holding Rose, the baby now half asleep. She accepted the milk but didn't drink right away. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she said quietly. "That's smart," Henry replied. "You shouldn't. But I want to help. And I won't do anything without your permission." She looked at him again, still studying him with the kind of suspicion most adults couldn't hold. "Why did you stop?" she asked. "You didn't have to." He considered his answer carefully. "I don't know. But I'm glad I did." That night, Lily slept in her clothes, curled on one side of the bed with Rose resting on her chest. Henry watched from the doorway for a few seconds before quietly turning off the light. He stayed up late, sitting in his office, searching hospital records, child protective services databases, and anything else he could find. He called his assistant and asked her to discreetly locate any information on Madison Gray, the name Lily had mentioned as her mother. Within an hour, he had confirmation. A young woman by that name had been admitted 2 months ago following a severe car crash. She was in a coma and had no known relatives willing to take the children. The girls had been placed in emergency care and eventually in a foster home. The report mentioned Lily escaping. No one had followed up. No one had looked for her. To the system, she had simply vanished. Henry stared at the screen in disbelief. He couldn't imagine a world where a 6-year-old could disappear and not set off alarms. And yet here she was, in his home, because she'd done what the system couldn't, protect her sister. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted but unable to rest. The weight of responsibility was unfamiliar. He was used to risk, but calculated risk, measurable outcomes, stock prices. This was something else. Lily and Rose were not liabilities or assets. They were children. Real, vulnerable, and in this moment, his responsibility. He knew that no matter what happened next, he had already crossed a line. There would be no returning to the life he knew before this night. And somehow, he didn't want to. The following morning began with a silence that felt different than the one Henry was used to. It wasn't the cold, calculated quiet of an empty apartment before the day's first call. It was cautious, tense, and heavy with unspoken questions. He found Lily already awake, sitting upright in the guest bed with Rose still bundled in her arms. Her hair was messy, her eyes alert but wary. She hadn't moved from the spot where she'd fallen asleep. Henry knocked softly before entering, holding 2 slices of toast and a cup of warm milk. She didn't say anything as he stepped inside, but she didn't turn him away either. That was progress. He placed the tray on the nightstand and asked gently if Rose had eaten. Lily nodded. "She had some of the bottle you made." Then she added, "She didn't cry much last night." Henry sat in the chair near the window, careful not to get too close. "You did good, Lily. You kept her safe. And warm." She looked at him with a mixture of pride and suspicion. "I had to. They don't care in that place. They kept saying someone would come. But no one came." Her voice cracked only at the end, but she quickly straightened herself and kissed Rose on the forehead. "I'm not going back," she added. "Even if they find me." Henry didn't offer empty reassurances. Instead, he said what he meant. "You're not going anywhere right now. You're safe here." That seemed to calm her slightly. She took the toast in one hand while still holding her sister with the other, eating slowly.